Cottage. I am Ellie. If you've been here before, thank you so much for coming back, and if you're new, welcome. I am a Boston-based knitter. I've been knitting for 15 years, almost 16 now, since I was in high school. I absolutely love knitting. I love all things cozy. I live in the cottage with my husband, Cam, who loves all things cozy, even though he's not a knitter, creator himself. And we have our cat, who's the coziest thing ever. Sophie, she'll definitely make appearances and usually find some way to add some extra element to make a project harder, often in the form of breaking my yarn. So she'll be popping in and out too. Happy to have you here. This is my Stash Bust 2026 project. I have a lot of yarn, and I've been trying to work through it without buying anything new. Find when I decide I'm going to use something up, I will often buy something else to help me do that, and then I end up with even more stash at the end than when I originally started. So trying to break out of that habit, use up a bunch of stuff. I've been really excited to do so. Today I am working on finishing the Vineyard shawl. This is a big, beautiful project. Super cool. The pattern was from Blue Sky Fibers, as the yarn is. This is knit in their beautiful cotton sport yarn. And as you can see, it has this beautiful Latvian braid detailing. I had never worked with a Latvian braid before, so that was actually one of the big draws for me with this pattern, along with the fact that it's just really luxurious. It's a really nice weight, and I wanted a nice shawl that I can use for cooler spring and summer evenings, of which we have plenty here in Boston. So I'm just about finished. Today I got the last delivery of yarn for the year probably, or until my stash has been depleted, which is crazy. I did need to buy one more ball than was recommended. I think part of that is that halfway through you pick up stitches, and I just tend to pick up more stitches than is often called for, because I go with what fits with the gauge and how many stitches I actually have, rather than a prescribed number. So I still followed their rule of going, I think it was 3 stitches, pick up 3 for every 4 stitches, but that got me a couple more than what was recommended. That gets me to how interesting this shawl has actually been to knit. The pattern starts where my little marker is, so I can remember, but you basically start creating an asymmetrical triangle. So knitting from the bottom up. Then you bind off what's here at the top in an I-cord, which you've been working I-cord along both sides as well. Then, once you've bound off to this part, you pick up stitches on one of the sides that you've been working, and then work up from there. So I'm now all the way over here, finishing up this scarf. One of the things that I really like about this pattern is it's been very easy to remember. It's a very rhythmic knit. I really prefer patterns that don't require me to keep referencing them. That's why I prefer charts when I'm dealing with lace work, things like that, because I do think it just makes it a little easier to see what you're doing, and then you can kind of start to read it in your knitting and not have to keep referring to the chart. I tend to stay away from things that require me to really look line by line as I go, because I knit on the go. I knit casually. I like to knit outside and watching TV and listening to audiobooks and listening to music. So it doesn't really work for me if I have to keep referencing back to the pattern itself. I'm currently reading Crescent City series. This past 6 months or so, I read all of ACOTAR for the first time, and I read all of the Throne of Glass series, so I figured I would just finish it out with Crescent City while I'm on my Sarah J. Maas vibe. She has announced that she's coming out with the next 2 books of ACOTAR, and I've heard whisperings, although I really don't know any spoilers, about the way that the Crescent City series fits in with especially A Court of Silver Flames. I kind of remember something about it being like, wait, who is this? What is this? So I'm excited to get to that part of these books too. But I'm partway through the first one right now. It's also getting a lot warmer out, so I've been very happily knitting outside. Which when I do that, I try to just bring I have a nice little LL Bean canvas bag. I'm a very Boston girl. If you follow along with me, you're going to find out that I love all things New England. All the sports, all the LL Bean stuff I can get my hands on. And I really do just love getting out locally and knitting in public. All of that to say, I like to use my canvas bag to go knit outside so that my yarn doesn't get dirty or anything. My husband and I are new homeowners, and we bought our house here in the Boston suburbs just last summer, and now we have our own deck, which is so nice, a very private space outside, so I'm sure I'll be knitting and filming some of that knitting out there this summer, which is so fun. It does get pretty muggy up here, which I don't love to knit when it's muggy because it makes my hands all sticky and it messes up my yarn, and I don't really like how that feels. But this has been a really nice project to work on at this point while we've been kind of oscillating between random really warm, humid days and still very cold days, just because it's a little bit more comfortable to work with when it might be a little hot. But it's also still nice and big, so when I want something on my lap while I'm knitting, it's nice and cozy. Makes me very excited to have this for the summer. I will say I'm not looking forward to weaving in ends. That's kind of my secret. It's not even a secret. That's just my weakness. I don't like weaving in ends. I don't like finishing. I like knitting. To me, the rest of it feels like sewing or laundry, so I don't tend to gravitate towards those pieces of the process, but I am trying to get better about that, especially because it sucks to put in all this work and have this beautiful piece and just do absolutely nothing with it. So as I work towards the end on this side, I am decreasing every 4 rows, and that's what kind of gives it this nice elongated triangle shape that we're working with. I'll also give you a little bit of a close-up view on how I actually do the Latvian braid. This really intimidated me at first. I didn't understand the architecture of it, and I've seen it in other patterns, especially on the cuffs of mittens. I've seen this when there's some color work being done. You might see a Latvian braid near the cuff. And I've also seen it in a couple of hats and things like that. So this was a really good pattern, not only to get exposure to it, but to really get to know how to do it, because do that braid many, many times over the course of this pattern. I decided to go with the name Currie Cottage for my creative working for a couple different reasons. One, my last name is Currie, which I got from my husband, so this is our place, the Currie household. And I really love the name Cottage. I am on that heated rivalry train for sure, no doubt. So I'm coming to the cottage. It makes me think of that for sure. But I also just love this concept of kind of cozy and oasis, both of which I try to bring into our home and make it a very just cozy, relaxing place. We are feeling so blessed to be able to buy a home and to be at this part of our lives. So for us, it's this is our cottage, this is our place. Originally, the house was built in 1920, So it's the original part of the house is quite old, and they added on to it. But the logo that I drew of the house is just the original part, which is a little bungalow. Like it was a very small house. We think we figured out where the kitchen was, and it's now a powder room. So that should give you an idea of just like how small the original house was before they added on in the 80s to add the kitchen and living room space and our whole master suite up above it. So since we moved in, we've had to do a whole bunch of stuff. We put sprinklers in. The lawn was really burned up last summer. Boiler needed to be replaced. Breaker panel needed to be replaced. We had some water damage over the winter that we had to get patched up and painted, and redo some of the insulation in the attic. Like the list goes on, but none of it has made me sour on home ownership or being here. I absolutely love our house. Right now I'm in my office, which we don't have any kids yet, so for now it gets to be my office and yarn haven. So I'll enjoy that as long as I can. But it's just a really happy house. And so I wanted a name for my creative pursuits and like online creative presence that reflected that. I have dabbled in Etsy making bracelets and like jewelry and stuff like that. But honestly, I'm really excited about this pursuit because knitting is like such a huge part of not just how I like to spend my time, but just a big part of who I am. I love creating things for other people, and knitting has always given me a really nice outlet to do that. And I also do really like creating things for myself, which I've gotten better about doing over the years. I had started knitting in high school. I had a night, I remember, that I was supposed to be babysitting someone, and they called and just canceled that day, so I didn't really have anything going on. And I just decided to go to Michael's. I decided I was going to use my quiet weekend high school night to pick up a new hobby. And I don't remember why I picked knitting, but I don't remember what I made as my first project. I wish I could remember. I'm pretty sure it was just a pretty basic like garter stitch scarf. But I picked up a couple knitting books and a couple skeins of yarn and some needles, and I taught myself how to knit using the book and also using like YouTube and things like that. So hopefully I can teach somebody else something that makes them really stick with this and get passionate about it. I would say my knitting was always like one project at a time, thoughtful, very purposeful knitting for a really long time. I think what probably changed that was COVID, for a couple reasons. Obviously, home all the time, nothing better to do. But I also I became an aunt in April of 2020 to my beautiful niece, Grace. And that really changed things because I wanted to make things for her. And that was really the first time I was getting into garments. It was the first time that I was really like leveraging patterns rather than just deciding, okay, I'm going to knit a scarf from this end to the other, and I'm just going to use some interesting texture or pattern from one of my books. That was the first time that I really got into more advanced patterns and knitting in the round and all of these wonderful things that now are integral to the knitting that I do. But that was really the first time that I did it. The other thing that started to change for me at that time is I just started ordering so much more yarn. The patterns that I was making for Grace were really little, obviously, because she was brand new. And so I ended up with a lot of leftover yarn from projects that I was doing at that time. But I also, because it was COVID, I was just ordering stuff online and getting it. So a lot of times, like, something wouldn't feel or look the same, and I wouldn't use it. And the stash just started to grow. I got more into real wool, aka not acrylic, once we moved to Washington, D.C. a couple years ago. My husband and I just decided we wanted to live outside of Mass for a little bit. We knew that we wanted to come back here when we were ready to buy a house and have a family. And so we had some friends in DC and we just decided to go live there. And it was so much fun. I don't regret that at all. It was one of the best decisions we've ever made. And one of the things that I found down there was an amazing knitting community centered around this shop in Old Town Alexandria called Fiberspace. And I just love Fiberspace so much. Even when I go back and visit my friends, it feels like Fiberspace is a friend that I have to make sure that I go and visit because it's such a beautiful place and the people are so nice. I started taking some classes there, and that was how I got into mosaic colorwork and then stranded colorwork. But it also introduced me to so many amazing brands of yarn that I hadn't really explored before. Things like Knitting for Olive, Manos del Uruguay, Jameson's, De Rerum Natura. There are so many amazing brands that they kind of like got me hooked on. And that was when I really started to move away from acrylic or kind of like cheaper blended brands and focused more on the brands of yarn that were really about source tracing and sustainability, and that's been an incredible journey for me as well. So I love Fiberspace. That also changed how I was stocking up on yarn, because now I wasn't just stocking up on cheaper acrylic stuff that I didn't like feel as bad giving away or donating. Now I was spending a lot of money on yarn. And if I did that and I didn't end up liking it or I didn't end up using it right away, it was a lot harder for me to feel like I could just skip it or not use it. I'd spent money on it and I didn't want it to go to waste. So that is how I ended up with so much yarn when I moved into this house. And that is also the inspiration for why I'm trying so hard to actually spend the time to use it all up. So you'll hear me talk a lot about Fiberspace, things that I've purchased there, classes that I took, especially when we get into Fair Isle. I'm really heavily influenced by Gudrun Johnson, who does amazing color work, and I took a really incredible 3-day, or maybe it was like a 2-day, 3-class Shetland knitting seminar with her. Got to knit alongside her. She taught me how to steek. She was so awesome. So we'll definitely be drawing on some of her patterns, probably sooner rather than later, to start working through a lot of the color work yarns that I have, like Jameson Spindrift. I have many colors of, so get to work through her stuff. The yarn delivery I got today was from Wool & Co., which is probably my favorite place to order yarn from online, although I will plug Fiberspace here as well. They have a great online shop, but it just doesn't capture everything that they carry. However, Wool & Co. has so many brands. The other thing that I do really like about it is that it all ships from Illinois, which I normally don't really care if things come from overseas, but with the tariffs, I've had some orders that I placed directly with Knitting for Olive and they help pay the tariffs, but FedEx came to me. Anyway, it's all getting disputed. I don't have to lift a finger. They're dealing with it, but it's just an added stress that I don't really need. It also just means that it comes so much more quickly. So got everything from them. They also do free ball winding, which is so super nice. I do have my own ability to wind up cakes, and I'm focusing on things that are already caked out of their hanks for my stash bust project. There does tend to be a little bit of a pull on the yarn once it's in a cake, just by nature of how tightly they get wound and that's not the fault of anybody winding their own yarn. It's just the way that it goes. The structure of having it kind of all wound up tightly against itself, as opposed to being a little bit more like freeform, right? Like it just has more room to breathe than it does when it's already in a cake, like this. So some more yarn, a little preview of what's to come. I'm actually so excited to work on a project with that Malabrigo yarn. But I have to finish this shawl first. I've been working on this for so long. I'm pretty ready to be done with it, to be honest. Especially now that I have all these smaller projects that I want to do that will not take quite as much time up. All right, I am almost done with this block of white leading up to the next Latvian braid. So once I get there, then I will teach you how to work a Latvian braid, and it's so much easier than you thought. All right, so I'm ready to do a Latvian braid. Here's a closer look at the last one. So to start things off with the right side of my work facing, I'm going to follow this pattern, which has an I-cord edge. Pretty simple. Now I'm going to knit one in my main color, which is this drift color. And I'm going to knit one with my contrast color, which I'm going to join in now. It's this nice navy color. So just join that in. Now I'm going to knit one main color, knit one in contrast color until the end of the row, and I am on this side, this is going to be important later, I am following color dominance rules. So when I carry my strand of yarn, I make sure that my main color is above, and when I carry my contrast color, it stays below, aka I'm not wrapping it around, having it like come up and over or something like that. I'm just going to keep those floats closer to the work and make sure that I'm always carrying the main color over when I do my main color knitting. Okay, so knit one main color, knit one contrast color until the end. Now, like I mentioned, in the case of this work, I have an I-cord edge. So I'm going to bring my main color in front and slip the 3 stitches of the edge. I'm going to go ahead and turn my work. So now we have the wrong side facing. I'm going to work my 3 edge pieces for the I-cord edge. 1, 2, 3. Okay. I am going to make my life a little easier on myself in a minute. So I'm going to bring my contrast color to the front of my work. This is where the concept of the Latvian braid gets really interesting. The way that you make this braided appearance is by wrapping your floats. What I mean by that is I have a 1-for-1 on my needle. When I get to a main color, I knit the main color. Now I'm at a contrast color, I'm going to knit with my contrast color, and I'm going to do so by picking up and bringing it over my main color. For the next stitch, I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to wrap up so that my main color wraps up and over. And I'm going to keep twisting like that. This is particularly finicky on the longer spreads of Latvian braid, on the longer sections of it, because as you can probably imagine, my yarn is getting pretty twisted up too, not just on the work itself. The key here, and you may have noticed I let my balls of yarn drop to the floor, like I just want to give them as much room to get all twisted up as they need to. I'm not going to untwist as I go. And that's because naturally the way that you knit on the next row will help undo that twisting. So I'm just going to keep going where I bring up whatever the new color is over the last color. You can see we're getting all kinds of twisted up here, but that's okay. All right, so for this pattern, I'm going to bring my main color in front so that I can slip my I-cord and edge pieces. And now I'm just going to turn my work. So as you can see, all of those twisted floats have created the bottom part of the braid. So now we're just going to finish by doing the other part, the next row. So again, for this pattern specifically, I'm working with my I-cord edge. So I'm going to knit my 3 for that. 3. I'm going to bring that yarn back in front, and I'm going to now purl with the same color, and when I get to the next one, I'm going to bring that yarn over. Always looks a little funky on the end, that's okay. So again, I'm just doing the same movement that I did last time, but where I'm purling, alternating colors, and twisting my floats as I go, so that whatever I am purling with, that's the color that I carry over the top of the other strand. And this does naturally unwind the twist in the yarn that you had on the other side. It's not perfect. You'll see we need to undo it a little bit when we get to the end. I think that's probably because of those I-cord lines, but that's okay. It's not bad. It would be way worse if you were trying to not only work with these 2 colors and manage twisting your floats, but if you were also trying to untangle the balls of yarn as you go. That would be kind of nightmarish, so don't need to do that. All right, so now we're at the end. I'm still going to carry this guy over one more time and slip it into the back. That just helps with the way that it looks when it's finished, and yarn management generally speaking. I'm going to slip my 3 stitches for my I-cord edge and turn. And now on the next work, all I have to do is purl, and that will just create that more finished look. If you were to knit the next row, you would end up with something that looks like this on the back. So you just purl the next row to make it clean, and there you go. That's literally all it takes to do a Latvian braid. So I am going to finish out this shawl and sew in all these ends. But it's going to be great. Be totally worth it. After many hours of work on this project, I am all done with my Vineyard shawl. I do really like how this came out. I'm so glad that I learned how to do the Latvian braid. Hopefully you did too. I think as far as some projects go, I knit them and I'm like, oh my gosh, I would absolutely make this again. I don't know that I feel that way about this project. It's honestly kind of unruly how large this is. I sat here fiddling with how to even wear it for a few minutes before I started recording, so take that with a grain of salt. It is beautiful. It is so cozy. I'm really loving sitting here in this, and I think it'll be really nice. I just don't know that necessarily it's something I'm going to wear out of the house all that often, just because it is so long. When I'm standing up with it on, it like can reach the floor if I don't wrap it around myself a few times. So that's very nice in some circumstances. I think I'm going to love this for sitting out by fire in the backyard, things like that. But I don't know that I'll necessarily wear this out a whole bunch just because it is so huge. I also had a little bit of yarn left over. Like I mentioned earlier, I ended up needing an extra ball, so I had included that one in my numbers for the yarn, but honestly, I didn't include the rest of it because it was already knit up, so I didn't count that in my stash totals. But that being said, I had a little left over, and I really didn't want to have any of this left over. And I had about equal parts of the white and the blue. So I took some time to make a couple of coasters. So a little bit of, variation between them. Just some very basic rectangular ones. I think they make a very cute little set. And then I also made a couple of these crochet ones. Very simple. All of these just casted on enough stitches to make it wide enough and kept going until it was a length that I liked. And for the crochet, I just did a very basic magic loop, and I just expanded out from there. So start with the 6, go to 12, go to 18, and so on and so forth. And then I did blue as the outer edge. So I think these are nice. We needed some more knitted and crocheted coasters now that it's ice drink season and there's going to be rings everywhere if we don't have some coasters down. And I do like the fabric ones because it kind of soaks up the condensation off your glass. So I'm very pleased with that. The ends did take me a little while, but they weren't quite as bad as I thought. But here is all the tailings from weaving in my ends. I did weigh this. It's a couple grams. But that's okay. It's not useful in any form other than to go into the project jar. So with that, I've now completed 2 shawls with this project, the Marina Bay shawl and now the Vineyard shawl that was designed by Blue Sky Fibers. So keep adding things to here. I'm excited to wrap this project up and have it and progress to the next thing. Thanks for joining for this journey. If you want to continue with me as I go through this stash, or you just want to keep up with my knitting journey, please subscribe, like this video, let me know what you think. Share your favorite stash busting patterns for sure. I'm going to need ideas. But thanks for joining along, and see you next time at the Currie Cottage.